Ryan Bentson, Team Zero Gravity.
What am I, 44 now? So 2 years ago in January, I had a massive heart attack. I had 100% blocked main left artery, which went unnoticed. For 6 years, I was going to. We knew he was going to make it in the first one because that wasn't the challenge. But the main challenge was the first show. Larry is a true athlete, and everything that he does to the fullest. And he doesn't have the goal to just say, I got a pro card. He wants to be on the.
Wow.
I can only take myself so far without having a professional on my side that really believed in me and knew what I needed to do next. So when it comes to being an athlete, I have no problem just saying, yes, sir, how high, and hiring a coach like Ryan.
But he also has a goal of doing 1,000-pound squat and 1,000-pound deadlift. And, and I think he'll do all. I think he'll do all the above.
Yeah. What's up, homies? So today we got Coach Ryan Bentson with us today from Team Zero Gravity.
What's up, brother? What's going on?
I feel like many of you guys know who he is, but he is a head coach and founder of the Team Zero Gravity, and it's one of the most successful bodybuilding teams in the world, and he's coached many successful athletes that you may know, such as Larry Wheels and Jeremy Potvin, and with over 20 years of experience, Ryan has earned hundreds of pro cards and Olympia qualifications across all divisions, male and female. Thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, bro.
Honestly, Jesus, sorry. Jeez. Trend cough. Haven't started yet. But I was thinking I might, I actually haven't drank a full one of these yet. So
oh, you have to.
Thinking I might pop one open for
the White Rabbit,
for celebration's sake.
It's great, man.
Oh, shit. Congrats on this, by the way.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's a pretty cool adventure that we got a part of, so we get to from the ground floor with this thing and watch it run itself up, so It's pretty cool to see.
What is like you and Larry's part with White Rabbit?
So White Rabbit is a funny story, man. It's like all my buddies that I wrestled with in high school. So I had a pretty extensive wrestling background, and we were getting together for a barbecue. And they said, hey, I haven't seen you guys in a long time. So I showed up and met with all my friends. And they said, hey, try this drink, So good buddies of mine are owners of that company. And another good friend of mine is the CFO of the company. And when I was telling them about a project that me and Larry were working on for the gym, we're opening up the new gym franchise. Steve said, look, man, I'll help you out. I'll be your CFO, but help us out with try this drink. And if you like it, be a part of it, So we jumped on board. And our job is to kind of give it exposure in the fitness space, and it's legitimately a great product, so we liked it. So we said, let's do it.
Honestly, it tastes pretty fire.
Yeah, it's pretty
good.
Not
just saying that. Or maybe I'm just saying that because it's got a kratom in it.
Yeah. It's a good product. And if you haven't had experience with it, a lot of people don't know what to expect, but it's kind of just like a good chill energy that you get from it, and a lot of people are using it for pre-workout in the gym, getting great workouts. It's pretty awesome.
Okay, I got to be real, dude. I know that. I think kratom's been extremely beneficial for so many people, especially for me. There are a few of those people where they can have those addictive tendencies for sure, but I think you guys have such a small dosage in here; it's not going to be an issue. And back when I was using it, man, kratom was literally the best pre-workout that I ever had. Ever, especially for when I wanted to film and stuff, when I felt like I was filming and lifting at the same time, it was just so much because I want to focus on my lift. It's way too much to focus on filming as well and everything. But then I do kratom and I'm I can just do everything.
Yeah, dude, honestly, it's such a good and this is really a micro dose, right, of kratom in these drinks, which is why we don't recommend doing more than 2 in a day. But it's it's something that it can bring it to the mainstream and be less intimidating than, going in all the way with kratom. And the best part is they figured out how to make kratom taste good, right? Because kratom normally tastes terrible.
Like ass.
Yeah, it's awful. So, the mad scientists over there figured it out and how to make it taste good and put it into a product that I think is going to be catchy.
This might be me, though, but when I was doing kratom, you know how a lot of people, when supposedly coffee tastes terrible. And then when people try coffee for the first time, after feeling those effects, something about coffee starts tasting pretty good. So
it's an acquired taste, that's right. For sure.
Unfortunately, same thing happened with me with Kratom. I got so addicted to it that Kratom started kind of tasting not too bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one before.
No, I don't think I've ever heard
Most people are
it.
like, Kratom is terrible.
It's
tastes
still terrible. Mm-hmm.
But this definitely, and something about the artificial sweeteners with the Kratom kind of balances out really good, and it gives it a nice. It tastes legitimately good.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the root beer one, you'll know that if you like root beer, it tastes like root beer.
Oh shit!
And then Larry Wheels, his one is the iced tea line, which is not, that one's not carbonated. So those are a little dangerous because they go down so easy, because it's not carbonated. So you could drink them pretty easy, and it tastes like an iced tea. So it's a good product.
Nice. Okay. Well, I just want to go track back a little bit, but to hear about your bodybuilding journey. I've listened to a little bit of it on I don't remember, but you were on another podcast beforehand, and I heard a little bit, but
sure.
I don't know too much. So, how did your whole bodybuilding journey even start?
For me, man, I started bodybuilding when I was really young. So I was always into lifting, and bodybuilding back when I was coming up was a lot different than it is now, right? We didn't have all these other divisions. So there was no men's physique, there was no bikini, there wasn't even figure. So back then it was men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, and fitness. And so when I first got introduced to bodybuilding, but it wasn't the competition side of bodybuilding. It was the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, like those kind of physiques that I just idolized, as a young kid. For whatever reason, it's always been there. Like I always just wanted to be the biggest, strongest guy in the gym every day, out of the gym, just for life, And so I really started picking up weights. We had like a home gym that my dad built for me and my brothers. So I come from a family of 5 boys, right? So I have 4 brothers, and my older brother is still competing. He's competing this weekend, actually, at the Masters USA's. So me and my older brother really started training together, and obviously for sports. I was always an athlete. I played baseball, I wrestled. And so, but my favorite aspect of all sports was always the weight training part, and it was a gift. I was always strong, like from the first time I started training, I had a gift for lifting heavy things, so when you're young and you get accolades for doing things, that's what you get attention for. You really focus on it, so from a young age, it was like my dad had me arm wrestling all the kids in the neighborhood, and and I first went to a gym. My first gym experience was a gym called Bulldog Gym, which was in Glendora, which was like this hardcore bodybuilding gym. And my father always told me he'd get me a gym pass, once I outgrew the garage. So at like 13 years old, I hit 350. We had an Olympic bench press set, And at 13, I did a 315 bench, and I said, all right,
Jesus Christ, dude.
I outgrew it. Take me to the gym. And he took me up there, and man, there were so many monsters in that gym, that really just inspired me. And when I started training the first day in there, all I really knew how to do was like bench press, because that's what I had. And I was in the gym benching, and I put 315 on, and the owner of the gym comes over, and he's like, hey man, how old are you? And I said, well, I'm 13. He goes, I thought I was in trouble, like, oh shit, I did something wrong. And he was like, nah, you got a free gym membership.
Whoa.
Yeah, you need to be here.
Oh,
so Bulldog Gym was my home gym for a long time. And there were some really good bodybuilders, like Mark Anthony Christensen was a top national level guy at the time as a light heavyweight. And then guys like Sean Ray would come in and out, Flex Wheeler, and a lot of big names, and a lot of strongmen, like guys like Marvin Phillips, who was like a world record in powerlifting. These guys were there. Jack Garbarino, who was a good bodybuilder.
Where was this again?
Bulldog Gym in Glendora.
Okay.
It's still there, kind of. It's not what it used to be. It's now like a little personal training gym. It's not what it was back in the day. But it was definitely a big like powerhouse bodybuilding gym back in the day. And so I grew up training with just amazing bodybuilders, and I didn't know anything about bodybuilding competitions at that time. It was just for the love of being big, big and strong. And so I was convinced to do teenage shows, young. They said, hey, man, you should compete. So I won a couple of teenage shows, and then I started competing in the open division, in the MPC, and won quite a few titles. And The thing is, I was never the greatest bodybuilder. I'll be the first one to say I wasn't the greatest bodybuilder. I was just known for being really good for my age. I stopped competing pretty young, but I got most of my accolades in bodybuilding because of how strong I was, right? So I would do a bunch of photo shoots, and people started hearing how strong I was. So a couple of guys like Irvin Gilb was a big photographer back in the day, and Irv, said, I got to see this kid in person. And I came down to Gold's Venice, where I would travel. I'd go to Gold's Venice, when I turned about 16 and can drive, I'd start going down with Mark and a couple of these guys, training down there maybe once or twice a week. And that's when people started noticing that I had kind of a freakish strength, and so I didn't realize that I was that strong. I just thought everybody was strong because everybody was in the gym I was at, So when I was hitting these numbers, then Irv said, man, I got to get this kid. So I got my first magazine cover when I was like 18. And they nicknamed me the Human Crane because it was like, that was the article. It was the Human Crane. It was a Muscle and Fitness cover. And it was just because of how strong I was. And they were like, so I used to curl 225 for like 20 reps.
Jesus Christ.
And they were like, no way. And then everybody thought it was for camera or fake weights, but there was no social media back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't like it is now. You only got notoriety if you were winning shows or you were doing something that really gained attention enough to get into the magazines. And so from there, I entered into, back in the day, they had a contest at the Olympia one year. They announced it was going to be the Battle of the Biceps competition, right? And it was like body weight for reps. And I ended up doing my body weight for 63 reps or something like that.
Wait, what was the exercise?
In barbell curl.
Oh my God.
So I ended up doing my body weight for like 63 reps or whatever it was, and I won the competition. And then from there, it kind of opened up. I had done some interviews with Weider back then, which Tom Dieters was the guy who was running Weider. And they did some interviews, and from there, they flew me to the Arnold, and then I just kind of, it took off, I always thought I was going to pursue my bodybuilding career further, but at 19, I became a father, right? So I had a daughter, which I've had full custody of from the day she was born. So it was me and her. And so I put my bodybuilding career on the back burner and focused on coaching. So I've been coaching now for about 25 years.
Wow.
And that first year in coaching, I had my first pro card, and I think my first pro cards were in fitness. So I had a couple fitness competitors, and I was training out of a lot of the local gyms, and then eventually I got tired of that and opened up my first little private gym. And I built it honestly for me to work out. Like I handpicked the equipment because I was tired of dealing with, when you're like the local bodybuilding celebrity, everybody wants to ask you questions, at the local gym. So I was like, I'm going to build my own gym and I'll use it to train my clients. And my daughter was like 3 years old, and she came up with the name Zero Gravity. So she picked it.
No way.
Yeah, She picked it. I let her pick it, and it stuck, and we kept it ever since.
What was her thought behind it?
Honestly, we were sitting down and writing out just words, and she thought those two words together sounded cool, and I was like, kind of makes sense. And then we had the name before we had any kind of like slogan or anything behind it.
That's awesome.
And
makes sense for you for sure.
Yeah, it was just it worked, and she loved the name, I loved the name, and I said, all right, let's go. And I never had the intentions of it turning into what it is now, because there was no bodybuilding team. There were no teams back then. There was a handful of trainers. It wasn't even coaches, right? It was Kim Odo, Body Bio. Kim Odo was a coach, and he was a local coach that I would hear his name a lot. And there was, Omar Ventura and a couple of these coaches back then. It was like a few guys that were coaching, and obviously like the Chris Aceto and guys who were around back then. Mm-hmm. Charles Glass, guys like this were around. Hani Rambod was, his name was getting thrown around a lot back then too. And I focused originally on, I had mainly female competitors, to be honest, which is funny because I'm known now as like the men's physique coach.
Right.
But I really focused, I think I had my first like 15, 20 pro cards with girls, and that was in fitness. And then in 2001, it's funny, September 22nd, 2001 was the very first figure show in San Diego, and I was at Pacific Beach Middle School, and that was the first figure competition, and I had my girl who won that show, and then it just kind of kept going and skyrocketed from there, you know. And 20 some odd years later, you know, I'm still here. I had six pros at the Olympia this year, all men's physique. But I have had people at the Olympia in every division, you know. But men's physique just kind of found me, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was against it, to be honest. When it first started, I was like, man, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to coach guys for men's physique. And I was like,
pushy shit.
Yeah, I was like, this isn't bodybuilding. They got shorts on. This is stupid, you know. But there was a local guy. It's funny how it started because my gym, I built basically for myself. And back then there was no team atmosphere. It was like you had one-on-one clients. The majority of them were people trying to do, you know, transformation, regular everyday people. And I had a few like celebrity clients and people I was getting ready for different TV shows or whatever role they were doing. And had a good reputation in the local community, but competitors would come to me here and there. And I remember this guy, Earl was his name. He came to me and said, hey man, I really want to do men's physique. Will you coach me? And I was like, I don't do that, but all right, whatever. He gave me a sob story. And, you know, he was going through a rough time in his life and he really needed this. So I said, all right, I'll help you out. So I took him to the first show and he won the overall. Now, the night before that show, we had a long conversation, him in tears, like, thank you for everything you've done, man. You know what I was going through. I appreciate everything you did for me. Man, we're going to win this thing tomorrow. So we win the overall. And, you know, typically they do like an interview with the overall champ after the show. Mm-hmm. So they do the interview and they ask him, so how'd you get ready for this? And he goes, well, I train myself. I have a team. If you want to hit me up, I do coaching.
What?
And I was standing like 2 feet away, right?
You said he has a team?
Yeah. So
oh, what?
Fully forgot about the fact that like I'm standing right here. I just got him to win this show. So I walk away. I go back to my gym Monday morning. There was a guy, Eric Drendel. Everybody knew him as Bird. He competed in that show, and I didn't know who he was at the time. He had taken 14th place in Class D, where my guy just won that class in the overall. Mm-hmm. So Bird shows up to my gym on Monday, and he goes, I don't know if you know me, but I was in the show with your guy. I basically took like 14th out of 16 guys. And I said, you were Class D? He said, yeah. I said, all right, look, I train every day at 8 o'clock in the morning. You're my new training partner. I'll train you for free. But you have to do everything I tell you, and we're going to make sure this guy never wins the show again. So Bird shows up, and 6 weeks later, I put him back on stage, and Bird won the overall, beating Earl, the guy that...
Holy shit.
And from there, every show that I saw that guy go into, I put Bird in that show, and we won like 6 overalls in a row.
Oh, my God.
Right. So from there, other guys were like, hey, man, will you get me ready? Tanel Rodrigue and Frank Ortega, all these guys that ended up being, you know, multiple Olympians. They came to me and they said, hey, I saw what you did with this guy. Can you train me for my next show? And I was like, look, man, 8 o'clock is my training time. Bird's my training partner. All right, there could be 3 of us, but that's it, you know? So then Frank went and won a show. So then Tanel goes, hey, man, can I train with you? I go, look, 4 people and that's it, dude. You know, like, don't ruin my workout. Then it was, all right, man, 5 people and that's it. Pretty soon I had a team, you know, like I had a group in it and it found me. I didn't find it, you know, and pretty soon we won 48 consecutive overalls that we didn't lose for almost 2 years. And then every one of those guys ended up winning their first national show. And 6 of those 9 original guys all went to Olympia that first year. And it just kind of skyrocketed. You know, everybody was like, man, what everybody that this guy's coaching is winning, turning pro, going straight to the Olympia. And that was Joseph Lee, you know, who's still going, right? Just did his 7th Olympia. That was Frank.
To me, honestly, he still looks like he just improves every year, which is crazy because I feel like I've seen him up there for a decade.
Dude, Joe has this physique that is, it's so pleasing to look at because he's so bubbly, right? Like his chest is so round and he's able to keep that core, his midsection so small that you can't ever count him out from winning a show. You know, his physique has never gotten dated like a lot of these other guys. I mean, he's got a massive chest. If anything, the one genetic flaw is he needs a little bit more lower lat, you know, but his
I
back,
feel like that's a Korean thing.
it is 100%, but his back is so dense, you know. So Joe on stage, I mean, he's just one of the best physiques in the world. I mean, he's been in the top 10 3 times, I think, at the Olympia. He's been as high as 7th or 8th, I think, at the Olympia. And so, I mean, you can't deny. I mean, he came back 2 years ago and after taking a layoff and was right back into the top 10, you know. And yeah, he's not to mention he's one of the coolest people on earth, man. Like he's been so easy. He's an easy guy to coach.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you know, it's just been the journey. It's been crazy. You know, they said 20 some odd years, and you know, it's been fun though. I mean, I get to do what I love to do every day. I get tired for sure. You know, by this time of the season, like Olympia just passed, and I'm like, dude, is this season over yet? But unfortunately, now the points for the next season have already started. Right? I got a couple guys. I got Ben Quill competing in India this next week. We got Tyler James doing the Ben Weider Natural this weekend, and we got Masters USA's this weekend. So I have like 2 or 3 shows every week.
Is there any break of any sorts?
After this week, for Thanksgiving, I take like a week off and go to Big Bear, man, and
Nice.
hang with the family.
Yeah.
And that's like the only week I take off for the entire year. I mean, I think this last year I traveled like 42 weeks out of the 52 weeks, you know? So
Gotcha.
It's a lot of work, man. But I have a couple hundred people on the roster right now. And, you know, coaching a couple hundred people it's time consuming.
That's a lot.
And I do it by myself, so I don't have a secretary or any automated programs. You know, like I do it old school.
That's insane.
Yeah, a lot of people call me old school. I do everything old school.
I think that's dope, but it's also extremely impressive because I was coaching for some time, and to be honest, man, I could barely even have more than 30 clients because I just felt like everyone, you know, everyone is a relationship. So
yeah, that's for sure.
having 200 relationships is pretty fucking crazy.
Dude, it took a lot of years to try to perfect it. I still haven't perfected it. Right? It's just every once in a while something falls through the cracks, and you know, all you gotta do is own it when you're a coach. Like, man, I made a mistake. I should have done this.
Right.
You know, people respect that.
Do you shred on Big Bear?
You know what? When I go up to Big Bear, I do. I used to. You know, I'd go up there and snowboard and stuff, but I'm too old now, man. Now I just sit there and drink hot chocolate.
Dude, that's what I do. Yeah. I just watch my friends do it because I'm too scared of it, like knocking me out of competing.
Well, you know, I got really bad knees. You know.
Yeah, you were telling me.
Yeah,
6 surgeries.
Yeah, I've had 6 knee surgeries, and my knees are destroyed. You know, but that's less from bodybuilding. That was more wrestling.
Oh,
you know?
shit.
Yeah, all the years of wrestling. I had knee surgeries all the way back into high school when they first started. And yeah, but, you know, I'm still getting it in, man. Me and Larry are training legs right now. You know, ever since the Masters USA's, we decided that we're going to train legs 3 times a week. I know it's borderline overtraining, but, you know, we're going to take advantage of right now Larry being so, you know, anabolic after being depleted for so long.
Yeah, of course.
And we're just crushing legs 3 times a week. We just hit them. I literally just hit legs an hour ago.
That's insane.
At Zoo Culture, so my knees are screaming.
Wait, speaking of Larry, how do you, what do you think about his placing?
I can very confidently come on here and say that he got screwed. You know, Larry, not to knock. Well, I will knock. You know, I have no problem knocking. The guy who won Larry's class was big. You know, he had fuller legs than Larry for sure, and he was full across the top, and he had a relatively small waist. The conditioning was really off.
He looked less dry than Larry did for sure.
Yeah, the conditioning wasn't there, but the more importantly than the conditioning, the guy was like ExxonMobil in his shoulders, man. Like he had so much oil in his rear delts and in his side delts that it was like damn near pointed in his rear delts, you know. And I mean, where you could see it through the sweatshirt at check-ins, you know. And to me, that's a bad look, you know. So, you know, I maybe I'm a little biased here, but I've also, you know, I've judged in the past too. So, You know, I've done every part of the sport, from expediting backstage to I've judged shows overseas, and I've, you know, so I look at it very, you know, I look at it from a very honest perspective, and I'm standing back and I'm going, I thought it was a landslide. I thought Larry won basically every pose because of the conditioning. And I mean, he was the only one up there with striated glutes. The kid that gave first, I would have given him third, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. If I were judging that.
Third to who? Do you remember?
The white kid that was next to Larry, who ended up taking third, they had 3 in the call out. His coach is Luke, who's Luke the Hulk. You know, I used to coach Luke, and Luke is his coach. And I thought the kid had good shape. He could have definitely been tighter, but I would say he had better shape, almost better shape than all of the 3. But Larry's so impressive, man. When he opens up, he's as wide as a house, you know. Mm-hmm. And the conditioning was on point, and he has that freak factor. And I think, without a doubt, I think they missed that one. I think he should have been the champ for sure.
I'm trying to see the top placings, because I thought, wasn't the one who won first, wasn't he white too?
The guy that won Larry's class was a big black guy who won the overall too as well.
Oh,
yeah. So he won. So he won the class and he won the overall, and it was very controversial because it was close. I mean, from what the judges say, it was a 1-point difference between Larry for first and second.
I see. I mean, the only thing I would have to say, or I would have to think, is that I would also, like, just like you, I would always put conditioning first, because I think that's how they do it especially any amateur shows. Conditioning is always number one. But when, I don't know, there's this weird thing that I feel like when I see who wins in classic physique, I feel like they really prioritize leg size more than I would think.
Yeah, it's been kind of a trend in classic that guys are almost a little bit more leg dominant, right? Yeah, to the upper body,
right? Like I'm looking at like Urs and C-Bum.
Yeah,
like the top ones always are leg dominant, and then there's people like what's his name again, that I feel like should do so well. Super tall, white. I think he was maybe 7th or something this year.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you're really judging accurately, you break down pose by pose. You know, and can Larry have a little more legs? Absolutely, but are his legs disproportionate? Not really. I mean, his legs are good, and they were separated. You know, but you know, we just do what we need to do. We go back to the drawing board. Now we're crushing legs 3 times
a week. Oh shit!
I don't know how I got involved in doing legs 3 times
with 6 knee surgeries.
I've been retired for a long time, but you know, it's fun, you know, and I believe in getting into the trenches with my athletes. I train with my guys every day,
right?
You know, when I can, you know, I have a lot of injuries. You know, through all the years of training that way, training so hard. You know, I've had bicep surgery, torn tricep, and pec. I tore my lat off years ago.
Lat off?
Yeah, I ruptured. I tore the lat right off the top of the armpit, like teres minor, teres major, ripped off. What? Contracted all the way up into my back.
Dude? How'd you do that?
Man, I was training. You know, they had the world's strongest bodybuilder competition, and I was going to enter, and I was training for it, and I knew I could pull more than these guys, so. I tried to pull 805 on a deadlift and got halfway up and it just popped. It just popped.
What?
Yeah, it was brutal.
And on a deadlift too.
Like, yeah, you know, I thought I dislocated my shoulder when it happened.
Yeah.
Because it kind of like dropped and I thought, oh shit, is that my shoulder?
Right.
And then I realized real quickly that the pain was in my back.
Damn. Dude.
Yeah. And
were you just like retracting your scapula and everything so hard? Or
yeah, I was at my knees and that last pull, and it just, I think the bar came off my legs a little bit, kind of pulled that lat out, and it just let go.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was one of the worst injuries for sure. Yeah, but, you know, I mean, I took a little time off the gym, and then I come right back. Mm-hmm. You know, but I've had my fair share of injuries and health scares, you know, so try to be a little cautious now.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess doing legs with Larry Wheels 3 days a week. It's not so cautious. Yeah, it's not cautious.
Man, I feel like that's one thing that I like. One thing I like to express is like the danger of bodybuilding, because it's not a safe sport. No. Not at all. But at the same time, when we look at literally all the sports in the world. Every sport has a danger. You know, like rock climbing has a danger. Powerlifting clearly has a lot of dangers.
Yep.
But these are all, I think people just distinguish them as different or less judgment because they are more physical and just more, I guess, easily, I don't know, more obvious.
Well,
Whereas like the dangers of bodybuilding tend to be more chemical and I guess related to like long term. But I mean, in the end, they all have like a danger to your health.
I mean, anything done at a world-class level is going to have its side effects. I mean, you know, one aspirin a day, 81 milligrams of aspirin a day is very healthy for you. It's good for your heart function, right? Good to keep your blood thin. But a bottle of aspirin will kill you. You know, I mean, it just depends how extreme you want to go with everything. You obviously, in the world of bodybuilding, you're always going to have your people that are the extremes. But the funniest part is it's usually not the best athletes, the ones that are the most extreme when it comes to you know, anabolics. I mean, there's a general misconception out there, and I think this comes from people making their own opinion based off of like their genetic prowess, right? Like they sit back and you're going, okay, well, I'm taking 600 milligrams of test a week, and this guy's twice my size, so he must be taking like, you know, 2,000 a week. And the reality is that guy just has better genetics, and he's probably taking half of what the other guy is. You know, like I've heard numbers of just like local kids at LA Fitness, you know, and they're telling me what they're taking, or I get guys to join my team and they run through their cycle with me, and I'm like, holy shit, dude, like you're taking more than any of the Olympians that I've ever coached, you know, because there's a huge component to the sport, and I think it's hard for people to admit in anything in life. Like majority of this is your genetic disposition, you know, like how are you built? What are your genetics? And what is your genetic disposition to responding to anabolics? You know, I mean, a lot of people don't believe it, but Larry truly, like, he's on TRT.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. That actually kind of surprised me when we posted that reel.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people did believe it because he had to downsize essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like how much weight did he lose? And then clearly how much weight did he gain after the show? That clearly shows he was literally depressing and wasting as much water out of his body as possible.
Scary, bro. Honestly.
Right. If you're on more gear, then you're going to hold a lot more water.
Yeah.
You're going to hold more.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I think people's perception, and that's what it is. They sit back and they go, well, you know, I've been running this, and this, and I'm here. Then these upper guys, the Jay Cutlers, the Ronnie Colemans, what are they taking? And, you know, and it's not true. It's not more is better in our sport. You know, most of the time it's just better is better. You know,
Yeah, right.
You know, and you know, there's no magic compounds, you know, like there's no like hidden secrets that the pros have that the amateurs don't or the average person doesn't. You know, it's just most of the time it's work ethic too. You know, like people underestimate the most important part of bodybuilding, which is how you train. You know, like how you train is more important than any of it. You know, and so many guys are so fixated on what could I take next to make up for this, or I need more of this, so what do I take? You know, that's everybody's first go-to is what do I take? You know, and not to say that everybody's not, you know, everybody's taking, you know, general compounds here to compete, but most of it is look how you're training. You know, most guys aren't training hard, and if you look at the top bodybuilders that have made lasting impressions, you know, like a generation upon generation, like the Ronnie Colemans and the Dorian Yates, those guys all were the old school, heavy, massive intensity in the gym. A guy like Larry Wheels, you see what he lifts. The intensity in the gym is insane. You know, I mean, he's lifting huge numbers. And you just can't argue with the fact that if you're getting stronger, you're getting bigger, you know. And so that's a huge part of bodybuilding that people nowadays neglect, because it's more about what can I take to get bigger, what could I take to make up for my shortfalls, instead of just getting into the gym and hitting it hard and grinding.
I do have one thing to add to that though, and I feel this is me also talking to not just the Gen Pop that maybe should be training harder, but as well also those who are already, or at least believe that they are already training their ass off in the gym. But I think there's another level to that. And I believe that's proper programming and like training smart as well. Because you can train your ass off. You can train super hard for years, but if you're not training the right way for how you need to grow, I just don't think it's going to happen. Like looking at Larry, for example, how long has he been training for? How many years has he even been using gear for? But he technically doesn't have the size of a bodybuilder that you would think would train, that would have for those 10 years, right? And it's because he power lifted.
Sure.
It's because he spent all his CNS on powerlifting.
Yeah.
Whereas like, you know, some of these classic bodybuilders back in the day were like doing 20 rep sets and 3-second eccentrics or even more. And who was really doing that in the gym? Like, especially when you're young and you're a kid. And I'm not putting any hate to him because he's fucking exceptional. But for example, like if a kid is watching Sam Sulek train all the time, I don't know. I feel like when I watch, I'm motivated to go in the gym and go as hard as possible and heavy as possible for 8 reps.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, and I love that feeling because I used to do that in college and I'd be like, look at the weight I'm like fucking pumping out.
Yeah.
But then I realized like when I started doing some 20 rep sets with like slower eccentrics, like a lot more time under there, which was a lot more burning pain. It was less just fatigue and then stop, more of like a burning pain that you had to overcome mentally. Then I saw more muscle size growth.
Yeah, you know, there's several ways to do it. I mean, obviously, increasing, you know, really bodybuilding is one of the most simple. It's one of the most simple formulas to figure out. Like, if you think about it and you put everything in its own place, right? Like, getting big is not hard. Getting lean is not hard. But bodybuilding is the art of getting big, maintaining muscle mass at the same time of maintaining a low percentage of body fat. And that's when things get a little bit of challenge, right? So the old school way of bodybuilding was just eat tons of calories, train heavy, get heavy. But then it was like get lean, go super, super low, you know, tons of cardio. And then you realize that you lose, you know, you're losing such a large percentage of that muscle trying to get into shape. I think guys now understand staying a little closer to stage weight is a lot more beneficial. But, you know, the thing is with bodybuilding, what makes it so simple is this. It's you got to recruit muscle fibers that you weren't using before, right? In order to grow.
Yep.
So it's all about different ways of recruiting muscle fiber. And there's several ways to do that, you know? And so, but most people typically, you ask them, you know, like, what's your routine? And they could tell you, like, well, Monday I do this, and this is the weight on my first set, and this is the weight on my second set, and this is my weight on my third set. If you know your weight that you're going to use before you even go, then you're not a real bodybuilder, because you're going to use whatever weight you can use, you know, that day. And a lot of people have this preset like notion. I see it at the gym, you know, incline chest press. It's like, okay, 1 plate for the first set, 2 for the second set, 3 for the third set. All right, next exercise, right? Well, where's the challenge in any of that? I believe in doing a system with all my guys that we do a little bit of combination of both in every workout, you know. So a typical chest day on each exercise, I'll do a warm-up set, like 15 reps, you know, then a couple of heavy working sets in that 8 to 10. But I finish every exercise with a 25 plus rep set, you know, to finish off every movement. Because I do believe in taxing from every angle, you know, of the muscle. So the volume, the lower rep sets are a lot more controlled, you know, and just getting that good squeeze. Then we get some ugly form maybe in those 8 to 10s, you know, just to move some weight. But then we're doing high volume, real time under tension kind of stuff for those 25 to 50 reps at the end of every exercise, right? So I don't believe that there's one way to train. I believe that if you want to be the best, you exercise every option when it comes to training, you know. And so most people, I mean, we have a reputation for it. A lot of guys think they train hard and they come train with my team and they're like, oh shit, like they're throwing up on exercise number 2. So, you know, it's you know, it's just the way that I designed my system of training. I learned a lot of that, and everything I do is just stuff that I picked up over 20 some odd years of learning under the tutelage of some of the most amazing bodybuilders that ever lived, you know. So I definitely didn't invent this thing. You know what I mean? I was a student. I'm still a student. You know, as soon as you think you know everything, then you're very mistaken, because you're always a student of this. Things are always evolving. And I've had the opportunity to train with some of the best in the world and to pick their brain and to kind of devise my own program, but definitely based off of years and years of knowledge that I learned from people who did it before me, you know? And then once you prove a concept of training or prove a concept of anything, I mean, it's track record, you know? If you see that it's working and it's not just worked for one person here or there, when you're producing, hundreds of pro cards, then you realize, okay, I'm onto something, right? This system works. Mm-hmm. But half of that also is the mental capacity, like the mental side to coaching. Like, you got to know the individual athlete, and you got to know who you can push, who you can't push, you know? Because the mental part of bodybuilding is the hardest part. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm with my athletes for an hour plus a day, but the other 23 hours out of the day, you know, it's a very individualized sport. You know, I can't control what they're eating when I'm not there. You know, all I could do is give recommendations. Mm-hmm. You know, but you know how hard it is. You know, I'm sure when you're in prep, you know, you check your same cupboard like 10 times thinking there's going to be something else in there you can eat. You know? And but that's the best part, because I know what that feels like. You know, I mean, from doing it myself, mm-hmm. and then doing it for so many years, I can relate. I know that feeling of suffering, and because it's mentally challenging. You know, but that's what I love about bodybuilding. You know, if it wasn't mentally challenging, it'd be boring. Right. You know. And that's what makes it such an elite group of athletes, is that not everybody can do it. And that's the part that I've always loved. I love the challenge of doing things that other people have a hard time doing.
We'll get right back to the podcast in a second, but I just wanted to take this break to thank you guys immensely, because this podcast is my favorite content to create, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. Contributing to it will further help its growth and allow us to listen to more amazing guests such as the one you're listening to today. So if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by rating us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you find your podcast, or subscribing to the YouTube channel. And if you would like to help fund the podcast, you can do so by using Nile for a discount off of Young LA clothing or huge supplements. Thank you guys again so much. We'll be right back to the podcast. I feel like one of the most laudable and responsible things someone can do is be a father.
Oh yeah.
And I honestly have so much respect for it, because it's the hardest thing, I think. Like, I'm not one, but just from seeing it and from being raised myself, just can't imagine how much like it takes.
Yeah. But it's a lot of work, that's for sure. But you know, it's one of the most gratifying things you could ever do. I mean, my daughter now just turned 25 years old.
Wow.
Which is crazy, right?
That's crazy.
I got a 25-year-old. But man, my daughter is like my pride and joy, you know. So, you know, it's got its ups and downs. It's got its challenges, especially through those like junior high years, you know, it's funny. I remember always being like, you know, my daughter, Mackenzie, they're like, oh, Mackenzie's dad's cool, you know. And then it was like, we hit high school, she hit like those early junior high years, and they want you to start dropping them off around the corner, you know. And I'm like, you know, but yeah, honestly, she's, I could say it's probably aside from everything else I've done, man, that's my proudest accomplishment, because she's a well-adjusted adult, you know, on her own and thriving. And, man, nothing better as a parent to know that you raised somebody to be self-sufficient and just a genuinely good person, you know. And I couldn't be more proud, man. It was, but you know, through the years, you know, of trying to compete, balancing that and balancing running the business, she definitely doesn't like anything to do with the bodybuilding world. You know, she grew up in the gym, so yeah. You know, I had my gym. But again, it's a blessing. The sport allowed me to be that full-time dad, you know, to be on all the field trips and to not miss any of those events, you know, because I've always worked for myself. And it's just allowed me to be present, you know. I missed a lot of weekends being gone, but You know, we had our Disneyland annual passes every year, and we went once a week. And I still meet her for dinner at least once or twice a week.
You guys went to Disneyland once a week?
Yeah, man, every Wednesday.
That's awesome.
Father-daughter day, man, every Wednesday. Go down, even if it was just to go there and grab dinner and watch and to watch like fireworks or something. But I made sure I made that time to do it. You know, that's the hard part. And I tell that to a lot of my athletes. A lot of people get a lot of grief when they compete from their loved ones, you know, because of the restrictions when you're competing. But people only pay attention to that when you draw attention to it. You know, I tell my athletes all the time, you chose to do this, right? So don't make your struggle everybody's struggle. You know, so you chose to do this, you make the sacrifice. But there's no reason why you can't pack your chicken breasts and in your rice and go to Disneyland. You know, people are only going to think negatively of the sport if you're constantly talking negative. Like, I can't go to Disneyland, I'm on a diet, you know, real short. You don't want to go because you don't want to smell the churros, you know. But that's the selfish part of bodybuilding. You can't be selfish if you want people to support you and support your career. So, you know, go to Disneyland, eat your chicken, have fun, and don't make it impact everybody else. And then I promise you'll have the support of everybody else around you. You know, if you make everybody else miserable because you're miserable, no one's going to like you doing it. Yeah.
Do you feel like being a dad at such an early age helped with coaching?
Man, being a dad at an early age helped me with everything for sure, because it forced me to look at what I was doing and how am I going to turn this into a career, right? Because now I have somebody who is dependent on me. And I took what I loved as a hobby and turned it into a career, you know, and it definitely made me more focused for sure, you know, because now you have somebody, another human being that's fully dependent on my ability to provide. And so it lit a fire under me. And I've been going at 100 miles an hour ever since. I still have that drive. You know, my goals now are different. You know, my goals now are to create that generational wealth. So now my grandkids someday don't have to worry, you know. That's really what it comes down to now. That's my whole focus, to be honest. You know, yeah, we all want our nice cars and make sure you have a nice living. But for me now, it's about creating that generational wealth that I want to make sure my daughter and my daughter's kids and their kids never worry, you know. And so that's the reason for the continuous hustle to level up, you know.
I feel like being a dad would definitely help with a great level of compassion and empathy, especially for your clients, because I know that you know, there are good coaches out there and there are some bad coaches out there too, and I think it's difficult to distinguish between the two at first. But I think there comes like a level of connection and understanding that each athlete isn't the same, that the good coaches over there understand that.
Yeah, you know, actually being a girl dad really helped, because I think, you know, by nature I was always more of like an aggressive person from birth, you know, like, and having a daughter definitely softens you up, you know. You can't. I'm glad I had a daughter instead of a son, because I think I might have been too tough on a son at a young age, you know. But having a daughter, man, made me so soft, you know. Like you can't talk to a little girl like you can to a little boy, and you know, it just gives you a whole nother level of sensitivity and compassion, and it makes you more patient, you know. And when you're coaching, you got to definitely be patient, because some people will drive you nuts, you know. I have quite a few people that drive me nuts, but you know, you just got to understand each person, where they're coming from, and it definitely helped. Yeah, helped me a lot. Yeah, but I come from I come from a very strong Christian home, and I'm a pretty religious man myself, you know, and I try to live my life that way, with those morals and values that, you know, I was brought up with. And I keep that same thing centered around the way I run my business, you know. So, you know, in an era nowadays where people are getting, you know, called out and canceled left and right, you know, to be able to stay in an industry for so long, you know, it just means you got to just do things the right way, you know. Treat people with respect, and you'll be good, you know.
What are 3 things that you know now that you didn't know 10 years ago coaching?
Oh man, everything. If I could even begin to tell you how many people I probably destroyed when I first started coaching, you know what I mean? What we knew, what I thought I knew when I first started coaching is so different to what I know now. And that's just from, coaching thousands and thousands of athletes and honing in your skills. I've been fortunate enough to have that many people that have trusted me with their body. And early on, the nutrition for sure. I thought I knew a lot about nutrition, and that's not just to my set of knowledge. It's just the world in knowledge in general. It's evolved so much from when I first started coaching. I learned from the guys in front of me, and they were like, well, drink apple juice and eat pitted dates for your carb up for your show. Drink distilled water, for 5 days.
Wait, eat dates for your carb up?
Oh yeah, I was eating like pitted dates and like applesauce.
Were you guys like fucking farting your brains out?
Oh, dude, stomach pains. And it was
try a vacuum afterwards.
Yeah, it was. I've never been able to vacuum actually. Never even tried to. But I don't think I'd be good at it. But these, the knowledge, just the common knowledge. It was like eat whole eggs, and again, it was like bulk. Just get as big and as heavy as you can in the off season, and that's how I learned how to bodybuild. But I learned really quickly, the system I came up with, and I use a lot of carb cycling, and that came from my own experience, right? So we did blood panels weekly on different days over a course of several years to really figure out like how long I could go with no carbs before I started seeing a lot of muscle breakdown. I started seeing a lot of creatinine in the urine and different things. Just figure out, okay, how long can we go before we start tapping into like muscle reserves, and how long, so we figure out like when those glycogen levels were completely empty before we needed to carb it up, and how far we could go before we'd spill over, and I played with that with myself and with a couple other people and my doctor that was close with me for all those years. And we played with that for a long time to come with a system that I think we kind of perfected. Of course, it's a little generalized. It's going to be different from person to person. Mm-hmm. But that's what you learn when you're working with somebody, and they got to be coachable when you're working with them. That's the other side. Mm-hmm. Like all we're doing as a coach is you're collecting data. And so you take that data and then you apply it and then you twist it, for the next show. And so what I thought I knew 20 years ago, man, it's so different than what I do now. But that's trial by error, it just evolves, and the sport's still evolving. I mean, I still pick up new things almost every show, to be honest. Like I'll work with somebody and then they'll go, I learned from Larry from his last show, he went hard with the food afterwards. Yeah.
How did Larry gain those 52 pounds after the show?
Bro, I don't even understand it. Like I've gained over 30 in one day after a show in the past, and I warned him. I'm like, dude, don't do it. It's dangerous. But Larry's a grown man. He's gonna eat, and he wanted to eat what he wanted. Definitely not the healthiest thing to do, but we did send him to the doctor and everything came back perfect, so his blood pressure, I'm like, I'm trying to scare him. Like, you need to slow down, dude. I bet your blood pressure's through the roof. And then he goes to the doctor and it's 120/70. And I was like, well, that didn't work. But it's insane, how different things have come. And Larry's just a different beast, dude. Like that weight came back because if people knew what we had to do to get him down there, and people could criticize it, I'd criticize it if I was watching from the outside. It's not the ideal way to get somebody down there, but we have a weight restriction.
Yeah, you have to make it.
Like, he had to make it, and there's no way we're doing it. Like, when your walk around weight is 270, and we got to get you down to 230. I mean, he hasn't been 230 probably since like high school, you know? So that's a long way to go. And is some of that going to have to be muscle? Probably, to get there. But when you drop somebody down to like 1,200 calories and they're still maintaining their weight, he's just built different, man.
Oh, geez.
And
that's crazy. He was on 1,200 calories, still maintaining.
I dropped him to 1,200 to finally get that, to get that weight to come down.
That's crazy.
And the day before the show, he's still 10 pounds above. You know, like at 240, he's sitting at 245 at 4% body fat. To get him to 232 was just 100% dehydration. You know?
Holy shit. You dropped him 10 pounds of
The day of. Yeah.
Wow.
The day of, man. Like sauna sessions and old school wrestling techniques, like sauna suits.
Do spitting and stuff?
We didn't go fully to like the spitting. Well, because when you realize how much you have to spit to get off like a pound, it's ridiculous. You know, so I used to do it to make weight for wrestling. But Larry's best physique will be probably right around where the weight cap is for the pro, which is 242. 242, he could be still hydrated and still carry a lot of muscle mass, you know. But I mean, he blew up. He's back to like 280, you know, now.
That's so crazy to me.
He's like 275, I think, right now.
That's kind of upsetting to me that he had to like drop that much weight just to make the amateur. Like, I just hate how the amateur has to have that weight cap. Like,
I don't understand.
Like, what if you're ready for pro, then you should be ready for pro. You shouldn't be having to literally deplete yourself and then lose muscle.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. To be honest, there should be no difference in the weight cap between the amateurs and the pros, because at the national level, you're grooming these guys to be relevant in the pros.
Right.
So you have guys coming down, and then the first thing they're going to tell them when they turn pro is you need to get bigger.
Get bigger, yeah.
You know, so I don't see the reason for having the discrepancy in there. You know, you should have somebody who wins that pro card and ready to step on stage in a pro level. And it happens, you know, there's, you know how many guys I've had that have won their pro debut like directly after, you know, turning pro. I mean, I've had it happen multiple times. I've had guys who have turned pro and won a pro show a week later and qualified for the Olympia. You know?
Crazy.
So, but that was prior to weight caps, you know, that was like guys were ready to go pro and, you know, they're already in shape, throw them in the next show and you never know what happens.
Does Men's Physique's new weight cap have that, you know, difference in amateur versus pro?
So as of right now, they're not doing an amateur weight cap. They're only doing it with the pros.
Okay. So interesting.
Very, very interesting. Now I think what's going to happen is you're going to get guys who are going to turn pro that are like 15 pounds above the weight cap, and they're going to have to get smaller after they turn pro.
That would be crazy.
Well, because let's face it, at the end of the day, and I don't blame the judges, so to speak, you know, I mean, clearly the judges are the ones who can dictate where the division goes, right? And it is their job. Their job is to control the parameter. But I understand as a judge, when you're looking at 10 people on stage, it's hard to reward the one who's a little more average. You know, like you have somebody who's just slightly more muscular and a little more conditioned. It's hard to be like, I don't want to give it to this guy because he clearly looks better. Now he might be too big for the division, but he just has a better physique. So that kid gets the win. Well, next show, everybody's perception is, okay, I got to get bigger to compete with this guy. So the evolution of the sport, show upon show, year upon year, just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The standard goes up, you know? So I think the weight cap is to really draw a hard line in the sand for like, okay, this is where we want to keep it.
Right.
And I think it's smart for this division.
Yep.
I think the weight cap is really smart. I think it's, I see the numbers have dwindled over the last couple of years at the shows. You know, you start seeing the numbers drop on entries. And I think
for Men's Physique,
for every division almost, you know, I think at the local level, you see less participants. And I think because the more that it becomes unobtainable, you know, for people, then you lose a lot of the general audience who thinks, oh, I could do this.
I see.
You know? When it first started, right? Men's Physique first started, it was the beach body. You know, it was like,
yeah, it was so different than it is now, man. Crazy difference.
Matt Christianer and these first guys that were turning pro. I mean, they look like, you know, a good in shape body you'd see walking down the beach. And I mean, nowadays, I mean, the top guys, your Brandon Hendrickson, these guys, I mean, they could throw on classic trunks all day and compete. Every single one of my guys that's competing at the Olympia could pretty much throw on posing trunks and go into the next division. You know, I mean, there's not much difference. They're just not hitting the poses, you know. Jason Wynn's got crazy legs, you know. Joseph Lee's got massive legs. You know, all these guys.
Of course he does. Freaking Korean guys.
Yeah, Korean guys all have huge legs. I think it's because they eat dinner like sitting low. Do you think that, like they're eating in a squat position?
The squat, the Asian squat.
I think that's what it is.
Maybe.
I didn't get that gene, man.
No, I didn't get smacked with that either, though.
Yeah, it's got to be something to it.
Right. Because there are Filipinos with big legs too, but
Yeah.
I did not. I got like some.
I had no calves my whole career. That was my biggest downfall. Like, I could never get my calves to grow.
Dude, sometimes it's just like that.
And I tried everything. Dude, I tried everything. At one point, I was like, I'm going to just site inject these things. and I did, dude.
Oh, my God.
I used whatever this product was. It was like painless pump. It came out. Let me tell you, this shit's not painless. I thought, this is it, man. I got no other choice. I'm either going to go eat calf implants or I'm going to try this, And I tried it. And then I was like, oh, that wasn't bad. I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning and I put one foot on the floor and I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
I had to take like the day off work. And I was like, okay.
No way.
I'm not doing that again. Yeah. So that had a very short life with me of trying that. Yeah. Everybody's got a lacking body part. There's nobody out there with the perfect physique. You see it when at every show. I don't think any bodybuilder, any champions ever had a perfect score. Ronnie Coleman never won the ab and thigh. Like it's even though he was a dominant bodybuilder,
right.
He didn't win every pose.
Right.
And so as an athlete or as a coach, when you're coaching somebody, what you're really looking at is how do I decrease the difference between me and the person that I know is better than me? Like, let's say Aaron Banks has this crazy back. So I'm looking at it and I say, okay, we know we don't have him in the back, but we got to decrease the difference between how much he's beating us from the back. But then we got to run away from him in the areas that we know we can beat him in.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a chest like this person does. All right, perfect. So we need to kill him in this part. And then we just got to decrease the difference in the areas that we're behind, And that's how you end up beating somebody, You're never going to be the best in every body part. It's just hiding your flaws, man. Hide your flaws, highlight your attributes, and you become a good competitor.
I feel like that's the only thing Ramon needs is his lats to beat Chris.
I was really, really impressed with Ramon this year.
I was incredibly impressed, dude.
I sat there. I was sitting in the front row, man, at prejudging, and I'm the first one to say that I think, I've always said Chris Bumstead's the unbeatable. He has such a great flow to his physique, and last year he was light years ahead of everybody.
Yeah, last year I think was his peak for sure.
And then this year, Ramon made some crazy improvements. Yeah. And I would say, even though I still believe Bumstead is a more complete bodybuilder, man, Ramon is impressive, man. Like this year he was impressive. And if Bumstead were to leave that door open a little bit, like at some point, the structure, if he were to like not come in condition, Ramon is close enough now to where like he could nudge him out, but Chris would still have to leave that door open. I just don't see that happening from the champ. But if Ramon progresses again this year, like he did last year, he's getting closer. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree too. I agree. Yeah, I've already said this before, but if there was a physique that I would love to have, like shape and everything, just genetic shape insertions, it'd probably be Ramon. Down to the fucking massive tree trunks of forearms, bro.
Yeah. No, that's impressive, right? That's what everybody sees, like big limbs, right? Like big arms, big legs. You can't not like that physique.
Exactly, right. Except that it's just, a lot of it is genetics, unfortunately. When it comes to the big, like just the big boneness of it,
Yeah, he does have massive forearms, huh?
When I think of him, I also think of my buddy Nathan Brooks, and then who Scott Zhang, the men's physique athlete. Yeah. Like I'm not like sure if you remember, but he just has these giant. Because he and I actually went to college together, so we used to train together. We were in the same coaching team together for some time and stuff. And then he turned pro a little bit before I did, but he always had these huge, like fucking wrists and ankles, and then just a massive Korean legs. And I was like, okay, bro, I wish fuck myself.
I wish I had those calf genetics, man, because I'd wear way more shorts.
Hey, man, God can't give everybody a 315 bench at 13 years old.
Yeah, definitely. That was
massive calves.
That was definitely my gift, but I just didn't get the calves, which is crazy because my father has giant calves.
What? Really?
Yeah, I don't get it, man.
Damn.
And my older brother, he's got some decent calves. like I said, he's competing this weekend still. He's 48 years old, and he's been so close. He was like top 5 at nationals at USA's every year back in the day, and then he took a hiatus from bodybuilding for a long time. He's coming back, and he'll be jumping in the middleweight bodybuilding this week.
Hell yeah!
See if we can get that pro card finally. At 40,
That's awesome.
48.
Hell yeah! Best luck to your brother.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, he's got a good physique.
Mm-hmm. Did you do anything, by the way, before you started benching at 13? Like, did you do any like kind of like activities or sports or like?
Yeah, so I grew up an athlete, you know. So I played baseball mainly. Then I wrestled. Wrestling was my favorite sport, you know. So wrestling's what I really started to excel in when I got a little later. Like in high school, I excelled in wrestling, and then past high school. And I've always loved it, like because I like the individual sports, you know. Not a lot of politics in the individual sports, you know. It's like if you're the best in your weight class, you're gonna win, you know.
Do you feel like there was any conditioning that you did that got you to that 315 at 13?
Oh, man, I think honestly mostly genetics, but I just started lifting weights when I was like 10.
Oh wow!
You know, like,
oh shit!
I loved it. You know, like
damn, that's crazy.
The first book report I ever did was on like the Arnold Encyclopedia. You know, like, and I've just always just had a thing for being muscular. You know, and like I said, I got attention for it being young. It was like, watch how much he can lift. Like he's so strong, so strong. And I did martial arts too growing up. So, and I've always been into the martial arts, and I always loved it, man. I used to watch UFC back on the VHS tapes before it was even televised, and like anything with contact sports was like my thing, you know. And I grew up, then did some MMA for a while, you know, like had fun with it, dabbled with it, you know. And that's a natural progression for a wrestler, right? As we go in there and roll around and learn some jiu-jitsu and everything else. I still love it, man. That's my favorite thing to watch. But yeah, just always just being an athlete. And I grew up in a neighborhood of athletes, man. Like my 3 best friends, like the 3 of us growing up in our neighborhood, my 2 best friends. One of them is Audie Attar, who's like he ended up playing football at UCLA. And he's now the owner of Paradigm Sports Management. So he's like Conor McGregor's manager, Michael Bisping's manager. You know, he really excelled in his field. My other buddy, Gray McNeil, ended up playing, you know, at San Diego State and played in the NFL. And, you know, that was our neighborhood growing up. So we were just all super, you know, competitive and good athletes. And so it was a natural transition.
I think people really undervalue the experience of like athleticism, sports, and like, for example, wrestling and football that can have an effect on someone's like muscle maturity and like muscle size in the long run.
Oh, absolutely, man. Plus I grew up, like I said, with 4 brothers, you know, so,
right.
So, you know, we were constantly just beating each other up outside and running around. You know, I was never the kid that was watching television. Man, I was outdoors like 24/7. You know, I was always playing either football on the street or playing baseball, whatever it was, boxing. You know, but you know, I kept myself busy with athletics. I was always doing multiple sports.
Do you know Shizzy lifts? Have you heard of Shizzy?
No, I don't think so.
No? Damn. Okay. Well, Shizzy, you've heard of Sam Sulek?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Shizzy is like, I think out of all the people in the fitness industry I can think of, they were the 2 that were kind of like blowing up at the same time. But Shizzy was blowing up mostly on TikTok because he wasn't really doing much of his YouTube at the point. So he, I don't know how many he has on TikTok now, maybe like 3.5 million or something on TikTok and stuff like that. But
so I should know who he is.
I don't know. I think that's whatever. But he's very controversial because he's natural, or at least he claims natural, and a lot of people don't believe he is because he looks absolutely massive. Do you have your phone with it?
Yeah.
You should check him out. Look him up on Google Images. Maybe you've seen him before.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you have seen him before.
Oh yeah, you had him on your podcast.
Yeah, I had him on my podcast too.
I know who he is.
Yeah. So he's what do you think of his physique?
I mean, he's got a real athletic physique. You know, when you see him, I mean, he claims natty, right? Yeah. I mean, I can believe it.
Why?
I mean, he just has like more of just like that athletic build. He's not built like a bodybuilder, honestly. You know, he has some good standout body parts. You know, big dude. How tall is he?
6'4".
Yeah, I could see it for sure. I mean, to me, he doesn't have that. He does have some massive arms, though.
Yeah, he's got some big ass arms.
I mean, I'll be the first one to think that. Usually, I think people are full of shit when they say they're natty, 99.9%.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't want to underestimate people's genetics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd have to see him in person, but
Right.
I mean, he's a pretty big dude.
Yeah, he's a big guy for sure.
You know?
Yeah.
But I've met some big genetically gifted guys, you know, like, I mean, there's definitely a chance. I mean, if he is on subs, he doesn't look like he's super roided up.
Right. Like I had Terrence Ruffin on the podcast, and he was saying the same thing, that even with his clients, you know, some of his natty guys look bigger than some of his guys that are on steroids.
Bro, I've had guys, honestly, that I know for a fact have gone to the Olympia that are natty.
Really?
Yeah. Wulong from China. Lifetime natty, man.
Really?
Yeah. Kid's genetic freak, man. Strided glutes, everything else. And he's been to the Olympia multiple times.
Wow.
Yeah, he won the Ben Weider natural. And I'll tell you what, man, if he's hiding it from me, he's hiding it well, because I've seen his body, you know, throughout all these years, and there's usually key signs, you know, that you could look for when you're looking at somebody that you could tell.
Right.
And he didn't display any of them.
She's so shredded though.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Longwu comes in shredded, but you know, the thing is, he's not that big of a guy. He projects big.
Yeah.
So bodybuilding's an illusion. You know, it's
Right.
like when
It
you're
is.
super
It
conditioned
is.
on stage, you look bigger than you are.
Yeah.
You know, and he's got good lines, you know. But the thing is, I would say if he wasn't, we would have been able to bring up some of the body parts that were lacking. Like he needed more in his back, you know, and the progression was steady but slow, you know. And I think if he was actually, you know, using anabolics, he would have made the progression a lot faster than. So I would say, I mean, I could go down the record saying I truly believe that Longwu was always natty. Yeah. And I have Tyler James competing at the Ben Weider Natural this weekend. He's a beast, man. And he's natty.
Wow.
You know? Unless these guys are really good at hiding it, you know. But
Yeah.
why would they hide it from me as their coach? You know, I
Right,
don't see
right.
that happening, you know.
Just out of curiosity, or for devil's advocate's sake, have you ever like seen or done any blood work with him?
Yeah, we just did with both. I did because I make all my guys do blood work. You know, and when they do their blood work, I always read all they bring them back to me, and I read them all.
Wow.
And very average, normal test levels. You know, and none of the key markers in there that would indicate anything.
Right. Like normal LH and FSH and everything.
Everything.
Crazy. Wow.
No increased hematocrit, red blood cell count normal, all that stuff. So, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I do believe there's guys that have the genetics to be a freak, you know, naturally.
Cool. I'm just quit bodybuilding.
Yeah, bro.
Sick.
Tell me about it. Well, I've been natty now I haven't taken a single anabolic in probably almost 7 years.
7 years?
Yeah.
No way. That's
So
crazy.
my doctor just allowing me now to use a test cream, right? Like,
yeah.
and I've only been on it for like a week.
Right.
You know, I feel like a new person.
Right.
Yeah, but my test levels are like 23.
Well, honestly, actually, like speaking of that, like, because many of us do feel a sense when we hear about bodybuilders, you know, recently, a lot of them are dying young. And Bigger Steve also in our last podcast also discussed that even though bodybuilding, if you were to make that analogous to like a sport, for example, like say rock climbing, we do have safety ropes. But I remember Larry was talking about you on the podcast saying that you had gotten all tests done for your heart. So an echocardiogram, CT angiogram, and a stress test.
Yeah.
And they all passed. And
Yeah.
you still had a heart attack.
Yeah, man. So my case, my story is a little bit different just due to the fact. So when I stopped bodybuilding, one of the main reasons why I stopped bodybuilding is because I was having a lot of like underlying health conditions. When I was 25 or 26, I stepped away from competing because I had a TIA. You know, I had a minor stroke, and could never figure it out. You know, like everything would come back pretty normal. And I was never the guy that blasted heavy amounts of gear. Like I ran very standard, you know, cycles.
What does standard look like, if you don't mind me asking?
I never ran more than 600 milligrams of test a week.
Okay.
I ran Tren a few times but I didn't like the way Tren made me feel. So I think I maybe ran Tren once or twice through my entire life.
It seems to be a common occurrence.
Just didn't like the way I felt on Tren, so I didn't use it. Pretty typical would be like 600 tests and like 400 EQ in the off cycle, like when I'm getting big. And then I would switch to, short esters. I would be on like 300 test pro, 300 Masteron, 300 Primo, and then orals as high as maybe like 50 Winstrol, 50 Anavar, 50 Proviron a day. And then,
Are those at like separate times, or is that?
No, I'd run those like all at the same time for like a competition, for like a cutting phase.
But like the prop separately from the longer esters.
Yeah. I would transition as I get closer to a show, switch to short esters, and ran pretty low basic cycles, anything ever too crazy. Usually nothing, not even close to nothing over like 2 grams a week ever,
Did you find any difference was there any reason why you changed the props closer to the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I switched there. So I just find that with the short esters, I was less water retention. And for me, conditioning is always what I've been known for. That's what I was known when I was competing, was always being the most conditioned athlete. And so I just used to focus on making sure I could come in as hard and dry as possible. And I found when I was on longer esters that I had a harder time with conditioning. So I switched to the short esters, and would nail the conditioning.
I've heard a lot of people tend to like the shorter esters for multiple reasons more than longer, more often than not.
Yeah, for off season when you're not worried about conditioning, it's obviously more convenient to use the longer esters, less pins, less time of injecting, and you don't have to do the frequencies not as much, and you feel better. You feel better on that. But when I would switch, I hated injecting, so it sucks when you're doing like micro dosing basically daily is how I used to do my cutting phases, and pinning every day just sucks. So. But yeah, definitely a better result when it came to conditioning wise on stage. I used to cut all injectables out though, like 6 weeks out.
6 weeks?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Because, I never had a hard time with size. Even when I was 19 on stage, I was probably 240 on stage. So.
You ever start feeling like shit? Like, 6 weeks down the line, you didn't have like tests in your body?
Yeah, for sure. You start feeling it, but when you're running enough, like you're running your Winstrol, your Anavar, Proviron, you're still anabolic.
You are still anabolic.
Yeah.
I can definitely say that because really stupid, but I had no clue what I was doing back then. I was just getting stuff from a coach. I was trying to stay natty as possible. 6 shows, 7 shows on nationals. I kept losing. I was like, why the fuck? And everyone's on gear. Maybe I should I don't know what to do. I was giving up, and then my coach kept pushing some stuff on me. So I was like, okay, I'll take this. It was an AI. I took AIs because he said it would make me drier. Sure. And then the next show, because I didn't win that one, I ended up taking another thing from him. It turned out to be halotestin. So I ended up winning my pro card on halotestin and Winstrol.
Oh, wow.
And then I didn't inject my first injection until a year after.
Wow. So
I had a year of depression, but yeah, honestly, sure. like considering that I would basically went a whole year running orals for that pro show, I guess you can kind of do it. It's just fucking so bad for you.
Yeah, it's definitely not good for you. When I first started competing, I did my first couple shows. I competed in natural shows, and I found out back then that I was backstage and I was the only one that was really natural. I thought everybody was natural, and all these guys that were competing were backstage shooting insulin and stuff, pumping up.
What? You're lying.
And no, I caught like 3 top guys, that were backstage all in the bathroom pinning their insulin before their pump up backstage. And I was like, you guys are natty? I thought we were natural. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm just on growth and insulin. And I'm like, dude, those are the most anabolic compound on the planet is insulin, and these guys, they consider that natty. So, that's actually when I decided, when I turned 19, I was like, forget this, man. I'm competing against a bunch of guys that are claiming natty and they're not. So I said, screw it. I'm gonna go to the NPC and I'm just gonna get jacked, and I went from like 219, and my next show I came back at like 236.
Damn, that's insane.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And I was conditioning was where I really excelled, you know, because I would work harder than everybody.
Speaking of insulin, I feel like all your athletes just have the best proportions, like tiny waist. Like, how do they stay like that? How do they keep that? And do you ever do you ever utilize insulin or GH?
I do utilize insulin with certain people. You know, here's the thing with my coaching style. I don't ever push anybody to do anything. You know, I wait for them to come to me and ask me, because I feel like when it comes to taking gear, that's a very personal decision, you know. And I don't like to, I'm not a pusher, you know. Like, if you want to stay natty, we'll stay natty. But if people come to me and say, what is so-and-so doing? Well, I'll tell you what they're doing, you know, to get to that next level. Now, whether or not they want to do that, that's on them. And I always encourage everybody to research before they do anything. And I actually make my guys come back and talk to me about it before they do anything, so that I know they understand what they're doing, right? I want to make sure that they're educated on it. And I'll do as much education as I can, but then I want them for themselves to kind of learn about it first. And if they can have an educated conversation with me about the pros and cons, then I'll walk them down the road of how to do it as safely as possible. But really, that's really, though, the answer to that question, right? As safely as possible, because there's always going to be risk. We just want to mitigate as much of the risk as possible. But insulin, for sure, I've used with many athletes. You know, I used it in the past myself. And to be honest, I'm a huge fan of insulin if done properly, not only but for anti-aging and overall health, if you know how to utilize it properly. You know, the problem is with insulin is most people are super uneducated on using it, and they think it's just going to get them huge by itself. And you got to be the kind of person who is extremely diligent with your diet and with everything else to be able to use that and use it safely. You know, if not, it's a huge mistake. So I know which athlete that I would even entertain that conversation with. You know, some guys come to me and I'm like, they can't show up to the gym on time. They don't even eat their meals. You know, like they're showing up and they're like, Coach, I'm eating my chicken and rice, and it's flame broiler, and you know, I'm like, you're not even meal prepping. Dude. You know, they're eating. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I've seen it all. So those guys, I won't even have that conversation. You know, because I know that they're going to abuse it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of coaches out there that I know abuse insulin, and I'm not a big fan of that.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of downside. Mm-hmm. You know, but done safely in small doses, there's a lot of upside. Mm-hmm. There's a lot. I mean, for overall health, you know, if you using low units of insulin throughout the day, it really takes a lot of strain off your pancreas. You know, we see this from a lot of people later down the road that are pre-diabetic or borderline diabetic from all the years of the force feeding that we have to do. I mean, to maintain 250 pounds of muscle, you know, that's a lot of food. And that's a lot of overall strain over all the years on your body that it's doing to your pancreas. And if you can mitigate some of that by supplementing things with a little bit of insulin, there's a lot of upside to it. Yeah. So I'm definitely not opposed to it if it's done properly.
Yeah, another thing that comes to mind for me is like if someone's doing GH and say that's a higher amount, more than they can take regarding like their blood sugar.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's something effective if they're not using like berberine or.
And there's other things that you can use too before that. You know, metformin is very good to mitigate some of that too. Mm-hmm. You know, but again, that's like you got to be on top of your stuff though, man. You know, like you really got to be on top of it. You can't be missing meals, and you got to be on time with your meals, you know, and timing it. Insulin is basically just like the speed train that's shuttling everything through the bloodstream at a rapid rate, right? But if you're sending an empty shuttle, then what's the point, you know? So you got to make sure you're utilizing all the right macronutrients and everything to take full advantage of the whole purpose of using insulin. Unfortunately, most people, you know, that I find in this industry, they're just trying to find the next thing that's gonna, you know, get them to the next level, but they're not willing to put in the work, either in the gym or with the nutrition side, you know. So, you know, I've seen that's why I do carb cycling. Through carb cycling, I try to take advantage of getting the natural insulin response from the body, right? By depleting glycogen and then loading glycogen, you know, and getting that natural insulin spike and then taking advantage of it, right? But then also knowing how to put it together. Like on high carb days for my athletes, I make sure that their fat levels are almost zero so that we're not slowing down the absorption of all the carbs, right? And so, the fats will take priority over digestion. So I like to keep those low, and I want to be able to shuttle all those macronutrients. But if you're not doing it, if you're not taking your multi-minerals and your aminos and everything else, then you're really wasting it, So it's very, very detailed when you're doing carb cycling, and even more if you're supplementing it, with insulin, then you really got to be on the ball. So, I think, like I said, anything done in moderation and with proper education is safe.
Mm-hmm. But do you feel like there's any effect of GH and insulin on, or do you personally have any, do you do anything with your athletes in particular in order to maintain a small waist? And is there any avoidance of say GH and insulin that you do to help that?
I think that 90% of my pros are not taking either. Right. So, and for men's physique, I think it's pretty unnecessary. Right. Yeah. Especially with that weight cap, and not wanting to get too big. I think if you're trying to compete in men's physique and you have to utilize insulin and everything else to get up to par, you probably don't have the genetics that's going to get you to that next level in this sport. Right. Because, to be honest, I don't think I have any of my men's physique guys are using insulin or growth. I just don't think it's necessary. And men's physique is all about the shape, right? It's all about that taper. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, the small waist is also genetic. I have a lot of Asian guys on my team, and they all have this crazy taper, right? Mm-hmm. But I have had men's physique guys that have abused insulin, and I've seen it destroy their physique. Getting too big too fast is a mistake.
Yep.
I've seen it end a lot of careers, actually. Guys trying to get too big too quick, and trying to rush the process. Anytime it sounds too good to be true, it is. You get too big too fast and something's going to sacrifice, right? And usually what's going to be sacrificed is your taper. It's going to be that waist, and you start seeing the waist getting wide. You start seeing the stomach get a little distended. And that really, honestly, is not the look of men's physique. Now, open bodybuilding is another story.
If you feel like any of the medications that we spoke about today may benefit you, such as BPC 157, GH secretagogues such as tesamorelin, IGF-1, oxandrolone trochet, semaglutide, then you can obtain these from Transcend HRT, and the link for that will be in the bio. If you feel like you're experiencing symptoms of low testosterone, such as depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, as well as lack of sex drive, then you can get this checked out as well by getting your blood work done at Transcend, and they will provide you expert medical analysis. Transcend HRT has worked with many professional bodybuilders and pro athletes, such as Thor Bjornsson, Phil Heath, and Jeremy Buendia. And if you feel like this podcast has any relevancy to you, I do believe that this clinic will provide of great benefit to you as well. I think that's one of the things that differentiates an average bodybuilder from a great one is one focuses their off season primarily on getting big as fast as possible, while the other focuses their off season on improving their proportions as much as possible. Yep. And those are two completely different things.
Completely different. Mm-hmm. Just being big is great. If you want to look good on the street. But the funny part is the guy that you should be worried about when you're backstage is, I used to laugh because in bodybuilding, it's the guy that weighed in as like a heavyweight, but he didn't look like a heavyweight in his clothes and his face was all sucked up. That's the guy you worry about. You know what I mean? The guy who walks in and looks massive in a sweatshirt is usually not your best competition. And so it depends what you're doing it for, And unfortunately nowadays, because of bodybuilding becoming more mainstream with all these new divisions, that you get the kids that are in the gym that are aspirational, they want to be a competitor, and they're taking everything under the sun, not understanding how much damage they're really doing. I'm one of those, I like I said, I had my first health scare when I was 26 years old, but at 40, what am I, 44 now? So 2 years ago in January, I had a massive heart attack, and I had 100% blocked main left artery, which went unnoticed. For 6 years, I was going to the cardiologist regularly. So what ended up happening is I would lay flat on my back, and every time I lay on my back, I'd faint. I was getting lightheaded. I couldn't do bench press, couldn't do anything. So I got depressed, man. I wasn't working out because I just couldn't train. Every time I pushed myself, I was getting lightheaded. And being a pro athlete my whole life, I'm like, this isn't right, So I went to the cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. You know, you're young, you're healthy, you're in shape, you're good. So then from there, I kept happening, and I went to 6 different cardiologists, right? Over this
6 different.
over a 5-year period, I went to 6 different ones, right? Even to some of the best, like at Cedars, and like some of the most world-renowned cardiologists. And I went to, and I did stress tests, echocardiograms, everything, calcium scores, everything came back normal. And in the stress test, they're like, dude, you're great. Your heart's perfect. There's nothing wrong with your heart. So the last cardiologist was like, I think you have anxiety. You know, I think it's anxiety. And I was like, I'm not an anxious person, man. Like, but maybe I do, you know. At some point I was like, maybe I have anxiety. Like, I guess it is, you know. And 3 weeks after that appointment, I had a heart attack, you know. And so I was at home, I was eating breakfast, and I was getting chest pains. And I was like, man, I think I really thought I like pulled something in my back, like I pinched something. I went to the gym and I trained with my team, and I just wasn't feeling right. And I went home and I was eating lunch, and then it started shooting down my arm.
Oh.
So I drove myself to the hospital. And when I got there, it was like COVID rules, you know, like nobody could come in. So they wanted to give me I needed a negative COVID test before they would take me in, until the main cardiologist for like the Valley was coming to the hospital at that same time. And he saw me in the parking lot waiting to go into the hospital. And he was like, what's wrong? And I told him, man, these chest pains are shooting. And he goes, forget the test, let's go. Took me in, and he was like, son, you're having a heart attack, and we need to go in and put a stent in now, you know. So I go in, boom, they went through my wrist, you know, did the angiogram, found out I had 100% blocked main left artery. But they said, because I trained all these years through having this issue, that little arteries, you know, it took over, right? But not enough to sustain long term. So my stress tests and everything were always normal, you know, and I never did, and I did like with the contrast, but I never did an angiogram, like where they actually went in and scoped it.
Oh, you never did like the CT angiogram.
So I did like the ones that they said, well, we'll do it with the dye, you know, and we'll be able to see if there's any blockages, and they'd be like, no blockages.
With the dye.
So I never ended up I never had an angiogram prior to this, because they all told me it was unnecessary. And they're like, it's an unnecessary risk, man. You're good. You know, so after I had that, they put in the stent, you know. I have a stent now in that artery, and I actually had 2 other blockages that weren't big enough yet for them to want to put a stent in it. So, you know.
That's crazy.
But it turns out all these years, what ended up missing was, I found out I have polycythemia vera, which is like a hereditary blood disease that causes me to have too much high red blood cell. So my red blood cell was always through the roof, but everybody always assumed because of anabolics. So that's why I came off of them for so many years. And even being off of them was never controllable until they finally said, this is what you have. So what ended up happening is all the years of my red blood cell count being so high that the vessel walls got thicker and harder because they're constantly under pressure. And because of that, my veins no longer dilate when I move position. So that's what was causing like the lightheadedness from changing, you know, when I change positions. Since I've had the stent and everything, man, I'm back training and I feel great. You know, so yeah. I feel back to, 100% for 44. I mean, you know, I don't feel 28 again, but you know, I'm back training and I feel good.
That's awesome.
So, but that's where you got to really you got to really be an advocate for yourself, you know. Actually, the funny part, the first person that actually noticed that there was something wrong, because I went to the cardiologist and then I had torn my bicep and I completely detached my bicep. So I was going in for bicep surgery. And I had told my surgeon, I said, hey, man, I can't lay down flat when I do the surgery, you know. And he was like, why not? And I told him, you know, I get lightheaded and I faint. So I told the anesthesiologist the day of surgery, like, can we do this sitting up? And he was like, why? You know, I said, well, this is my symptoms when I lay back. And he goes, I'm not putting this guy to sleep, you know, like he's too high risk. So, he did a little test and he put me in the bed with all the monitors on. And when he laid it back, my blood pressure dropped to like 0.
Whoa.
And he was like, fuck this. Like, I'm not going to be responsible for this.
Holy
so
shit.
the surgeon goes, well, we got to do this surgery. He goes, well, we'll do a nerve block. So I did it awake. I did it sitting up awake with a nerve block that just numbed my arm.
Whoa.
And then they gave me something which was, I don't know, whatever it was to make me calm. It was great. I was like, I don't know what that was. But you know, I sat there awake. I could kind of interact a little bit, but I don't remember much of it. You know, they did the surgery and then from there they were like, you need to follow up again. And then a couple weeks later, boom, I had the heart attack before I could even get back to the cardiologist. You know, and figured it out. So anesthesiologist figured it out before anybody.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I started thinking I was nuts, you know. They're like, you have anxiety. I'm like, I guess I do.
Fuck.
Like,
dude, it's like that shit when you like look up like symptoms on WebMD and you're like, well, I got cancer.
Oh yeah, dude,
Fuck
don't
me.
ever do that. Well, every symptom is basically like the same, right? You could either have the flu or you could be dying. You know, so no, I never tried to self-diagnose, but after a while, man, you get frustrated, you know, with your health. You're doing everything you can. They just keep sending. Actually, the cardiologist got mad the last time I was there. He's like, dude, there's nothing wrong. You don't need to come back.
Jesus, what the fuck?
Then I called him afterwards, like, fuck you, dude. I just had a heart attack, buddy. Yeah, so, yeah, but I'm good now, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
They said if I didn't get there when I did, they said like 5 more minutes, man, I would have been done.
Yeah, man. Seriously.
Yeah.
Jesus. So, I guess they said. What did they say exactly about the angiogram being too high risk or unnecessary risk?
Yeah. So apparently, when you do an angiogram, there's always like a small percentage of there being complications, and one of the worst case scenario was death, right, from a bad angiogram. So,
Jesus.
So they were like, there's nothing wrong with you and there's no reason to go that far. Like, we would have seen it already in all these other tests. And you know what they mainly told me? They go, dude, you do a stress test every day. You work out every day. And as hard as you train, if there's something wrong with your heart, you would have had a heart attack already. That's what they kept telling me. And I think it was just because when you look fit and you're in shape and you're 40 years old, they're thinking, nah, it's something else, you know? And so, you know, I think they just never took that step to do the angiogram. I did stress tests and EKGs, and I did whatever they call it with contrast. You know, they put the dye in and they put you in a CT scan to make sure there's no blockages. But that's not 100% accurate, you know? So not until they actually go into the artery and see if it's there. But usually a calcium score would show that too. But I think it's a difference. My blockages and thicknesses of my arteries were for other reasons. It wasn't necessarily from cholesterol, you know? So, but I am on cholesterol meds now and blood thinners and stuff for the rest of my life. I take like high dose of blood thinners twice a day.
You said the blockage was mostly because
of like scar tissue and calcified from me having that high red blood cell count for so many years, caused a lot of scarring and hardening of my arteries.
What did you say it was called?
Polycythemia.
Polycythemia, right?
Polycythemia vera. So polycythemia would be like outside source caused it, like being on anabolics will cause polycythemia. Polycythemia vera is like a genetic disease. So with no anabolics, mine is uncontrollable. I did blood. I was donating blood after that when I first got diagnosed. I had to donate blood every week.
Oh, wow.
And I did that for a while.
Crazy.
Yeah. And just to keep those numbers under control. So the taking anabolics was completely off the table for so many years.
I'm really blessed with that. So that's nice for me. I actually still have yet to do a phlebotomy.
Really?
Yeah. But then again, this is the first time I've ever run like any significant cycle of any sorts to bulk for my ProDebut. So
yeah, mine was more hereditary.
Yeah,
you know, it's like
right.
a genetic thing. I got no calves and high blood, so
fuck. Well, if you're down, a lot of people actually ask some questions. So if you want to hear some questions from the audience,
sure.
Oh, actually, I have one more question that I want to ask. So, like in 2023, we know that there's a lot of kids that are already taking steroids, regardless of anything that we say. So, if you had maybe just a few minutes to tell somebody like some uncommonsensical things to avoid an early death and other health consequences? Is there anything you would tell them?
Moderation, number one, right? And then self-education, right? Make sure you know what you're taking. Don't just take something because your buddy at the gym, I'm sorry, that was loud. Just because your friend at the gym told you to take it or it's going to make you big. Like, know what you're putting into your body. Number two, make sure you're doing everything with the doctor's supervision. Nowadays, there's so many resources, man. Like, we have all these hormone companies and clinics and places that you can go. So you got to stay on top of your own health. You got to do your blood panels, and you got to make sure that you don't have any underlying health conditions before you start. So before anybody does anything the first time, I do a full physical and health checkup, and then be transparent with your doctors, right? A lot of people, want to keep it quiet, but there's not so much of a stigma to it as it used to be. It used to be really hush hush back in the day, and you couldn't talk about it because it was, people didn't understand it. But now that we have so many people understanding what these hormones are, and there's so many doctors that are willing to deal with people and to kind of manage it, just make sure you're doing it right, and then don't even just trust the doctors. Like, do your own education and understand fully what every compound does, right? And just knowing, if you go in there educated about what you're doing, at least you're going to make educated decisions for yourself. And if you make poor decisions, then at least it was an educated poor decision.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Also, out of curiosity, what is you and Larry's plan now?
Moving forward, we don't have any set date on when we're going to compete. He does, like, he's going to Dubai for the muscle show, working a couple expos, got some collabs that he's got to do. He's got a big arm wrestling super match coming up that he's going to get ready for. So him being 280 is very beneficial for that, so he's going to focus on that, and we're just going to take the time to focus on bringing up what needs to come up. We're training legs 3 days a week right now. And we're going to focus on bringing that up and balance to his physique. We don't have any weight to play with. So we have to be very careful. We're bringing up the legs. We're not going to focus so much time and energy on the body parts like his back. That's already tremendous.
Yeah, right? His back's huge.
So his back is massive. We don't need to add anything there. So we can take a day or two away from the back training days and prioritize it on the leg days. You'll see him back in 2024, on stage, ready to get the pro card. But the goal is to put him on stage to get the pro card and then be relevant right away in the pros. Larry is not doing this for publicity. Larry is a true athlete, and everything that he does to the fullest. And he doesn't have the goal to just say, I got a pro card. He wants to be on the Olympia stage. But he also has a goal of doing 1,000-pound squat and 1,000-pound deadlift. And, and I think he'll do all the above.
Holy shit.
I mean, he really is a phenom.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to accomplish all the above. And I think he'll do them all within this next year.
Mm-hmm.
So first things first, he's got the things already on the schedule that he's got to do strength-wise, and which is great because it works congruent with what we're doing anyway.
Yeah.
Train hard, get huge, and then come back shredded for the next time, and it'll be in 2024.
Oh, yeah. I love that. He literally is Ronnie Coleman. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
All right. Let's see what these guys have to say. You don't have to answer some of these, by the way, if you don't want to.
Yeah.
But Clay Johnson asks, best compounds for off-season growth phase.
I believe in sticking to the basics, man. In off-season, running a test and some anabolic and androgen. Like testing EQ, testing DECA, testing MPP. I like to run MPP as a bridge as we're getting closer to a show. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I do like to stay away from in the off season is compounds, right? So I'm not a big fan of things like Cestanol that are multiple different strains of testosterone, because I believe in preserving your body's receptors, right? Mm-hmm. So if you flood your receptors with multiple compounds, when you want to switch to something, what are you going to switch to? Right. So, and I believe in running shorter cycles in the off season. So I believe in being on and off equal parts, right? Like half the year on, half the year off. But if you blast like a 16-week cycle, right, in the off season of tests and EQ, there's going to be a lot of people that can think this is controversial, but if you run 16 weeks on a cycle and then you got to cycle off for 16, nobody's coming off for 16 weeks. They want to come off for like 6, 7, 8 weeks. That's just not enough time, right, to be healthy. So if you do that, yes, you're going to maximize over 16 weeks. You've maximized it, then you come off. But by the time you go back on, you've lost so much of what you put on. So in the off season, I like to run my guys, a lot of people, on smaller cycles, like 4 weeks on and 4 weeks off, on long esters, right? Because by the time those 4 weeks, it's kind of kicking in. But by the 4 weeks off, it's not even fully out of the system, but it's giving your body the same amount of time to rest, right? So I believe that it's more slow and steady progress of just doing shorter cycles on and off, but equal parts.
Gotcha.
You know, because it just gives you a little more of a steady, gradual incline instead of this and this all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I feel like there's never really any exact way to, just like bodybuilding and training, there's so many different ways, ranges to train for hypertrophy, even scientifically. Unfortunately, we don't have the scientific credible evidence for steroid use, but I mean, it just seems like there's not really any direct way to do it as long as your blood work is showing that you're healthy.
As long as the blood work
relatively
is good. Yeah, as long as it's good, and then making sure that your post cycle is good. You know, I use a lot of HCG and Clomid in the post cycle to make sure that we don't have any kind of heavy crash. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Lord Fader asks, what does it feel like to have a client that wins?
Well, man, I tell you what, coaching is what saved my life, man, because as an athlete, when you transition from being an athlete, most people afterwards, they you know, that's where people suffer from a lot of depression, right? Like your whole identity is wrapped up into who you are as an athlete. And for me, I was able to transition all that energy into my coaching. And so, to be quite honest, because bodybuilding being such a recluse sport, I get more gratification out of when one of my athletes wins a show than I ever did. You know, you win a show, and you know this. You win a show, and then you go home, and to your friends and your family, you're still just Ryan, and I'm still eating egg whites the next day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of like the day after Christmas feeling. Like it's over, and then you're still just the same guy. You're eating your egg whites and you're eating your oatmeal in the morning, and nothing changed. Mm-hmm. But there's so much more gratification that I get, man, when one of my athletes wins. That sticks. You know, like there's a lot of pride in that, and that sticks with me. I got so much pride in guys that won shows 15 years ago still, you know. So I found that I got a lot more satisfaction out of one of my athletes win than I ever did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's such a dad thing to say. Oh, well, Ryan Bez actually already asked, we already said this, but his question was expand on his health post having a heart attack. Let's see. Killer Beast says PCT and fertility protocol after cycles.
Well, you know, I mean, that's pretty standard. You know, like I just said, I run my guys on HCG and Clomid and HMG if they're trying to, you know, have kids.
What's the use of HMG?
I like to mix the both, right? Really, that's the best for fertility. Those two together are the greatest combo. I've had many guys that, and keep this in mind: if you're not trying to get your girl pregnant, careful when you're running those post cycle, right? I've had a lot of mistakes. Guys that are like, "Guess what, coach? I'm going to be a dad." You know, that happens afterwards. You know, so you got to be careful, but. It depends how hard you blasted your cycles,
right?
You know, like I've had guys that have taken years to get their numbers back, you know, and some that never come back.
Right. Yeah.
But see, that's a lot of guys want to run it, and then they go at the very end, like, okay, now I want to have kids. I'm like, well, you abused your body for 5 years, dude. You know, if you, and I'll say this to everybody starting now, because there's no 20-year-old kid just like, can't wait to be a dad. You know what I mean? But there will be a point in your life where that's going to become a thing.
Very likely.
So in these early years, everybody's like, oh, I'm not even worried about that. Well, you're going to change, you know, and whoever you're dating or whoever you're marrying later is going to change. That whole scenario is going to change. So you got to take care of your health from day one, you know, and you got to take care of your post cycles from day one. You can't just run it for 5 years and then go, okay, now I'm ready to have kids. Let me run a good post cycle. You know, HCG and Clomid and HMG aren't going to work for you necessarily if you didn't do it regularly throughout your entire career. You know, so just make sure that you're doing it properly always.
Vigorous Steve says the same thing.
Yeah.
In fact, he honestly just recommends running HCG just year round with your cycle.
You know, it's not a bad idea, to be honest. But that's why when I run these shorter cycles, it really is like 4 weeks on gear and then 4 weeks on HCG, you know, and alternating those all year round, you know, and it's better for your mental health. You know, you don't want to crash after these shows. That's a dark place to be in for some people.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Gick Z Richard asks, I'm not gonna. I don't really want to ask this one. He goes, why he let Larry overeat that much after the show?
Larry is a grown ass adult. I didn't let him eat anything. You know, Larry's a grown man. He eats what he wants to eat. You know, I'm here as the coach, and I don't advocate doing it. That's for sure. It's not healthy. Don't do it. Larry's just a phenom who could do it and still have perfect blood pressure.
Yeah, the blood pressure thing. Brandon Smith asks, do you take on non-pro clients?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny, man. You know, you get kind of like labeled, right? When you start to be a coach at a certain level and people are like, oh, he only works with pros. No, man. Honestly, I have more fun working with new competitors than I do with pros. And to be honest, when it's working with pros that have already been pros that have been through like 3 or 4 coaches, sometimes it's the worst for me. I don't like doing it. And anybody who knows me knows I'm not the kind to poach athletes. I don't ever approach anybody. I've never gone to a single person and said, you should let me coach you. I wait for people to approach me. And
except for that second guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We're like, I'll coach you for free. So we can beat this dude.
That's how my career started, for sure. No, and I didn't approach him. He came to my gym. He showed up to the gym. So, you know, I think at this point, I work with anybody who's willing to work. I don't just take anybody. I kind of fill it out, you know, based off of the personality. At this point in my career, I want to work with people I enjoy working with, you know, and whether that's a brand new first timer, sometimes this is the most fun for me, you know, and I don't even base it off of ability. You know, I don't look at somebody and go, this guy could be a pro, I'll work with him. You know, it's just based off of personality, whether or not I want to work with you or not. Yeah.
Rupak asks, what did Larry eat after the show?
I wasn't even there because right after the Olympia Amateur was on Wednesday, and then we had men's physique prejudging Saturday morning. So as soon as Larry was done, my focus shifted fully onto my pros that were now 2 days out, 3 days out from the show. So he went on. I went to one dinner with him. It's funny because I was sitting at the table, and if you know Baker's this massive power lifter, you know, and then Larry's on this side, and we went to Ruth Chris, and they were handing out the bread, dude, and like 4 rounds of bread came out and never made it to me because it never made it past Baker or Larry. I was like, dude, can you put the bread here next time? We need to start here, you know. So I know that I know he ate well. I didn't witness any of it, actually, though. I wasn't around to see it. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh, Alessandra. This is a friend of mine. She's jacked. Alessandra LaCorpa asks, do you coach wellness?
I do coach wellness. I just had, I've had a couple wellness overalls at the NPC level in the last 3 shows. I think we won the last 3.
Nice.
And I definitely have some pro wellness. It's an awesome division. I love wellness. You know, I think the divisions that the higher the level gets, the more I'll excel because that's where it separates coaches who actually have like real knowledge versus entry level. And I think so. The more advanced the level gets, the more fun I have with it. I think I have most of my pro cards in figure, to be honest, because I started there, and then probably men's physique, and then bodybuilding after that. Wellness is fairly new, so I don't have as many there, but I love that division. I think it's going to take over. I think in the next couple of years, the top 2 divisions will be wellness and classic.
Instead of bikini and classic?
Bikini and men's physique, I would say, still like number wise, it's more dominant. But I think the popularity that like C-Bum has brought to classic
is blowing up.
Is blowing up. And why wouldn't it, man? Who doesn't want to look like that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what bodybuilding was when I competed, is what classic is now. You know?
Oh, that was way back.
Yeah, bodybuilding back in the late 90s and early 2000s was very similar physiques to what the classic guys are now. And it's a more aesthetic look. To be honest, I wouldn't trade places with most of the guys in the top 5 at the Open Olympia. I wouldn't want to look that way. You know, like it's just too. I mean, I know what it feels like to be 300 pounds. I was 300 in my off season. Yeah. You just can't breathe. You know,
I wouldn't either, except for Keon Pearson, probably.
Keon has a beautiful structure, man.
It's fucking crazy.
You know, that structure. He wasn't as conditioned as
yeah.
You know, but how do you deny that structure, man? Like that small waist, that taper. I'm a fan of structure. I look at that. When I look at bodybuilding, I want to see a look that, like, any single person, you put them out front of Walgreens and the average person goes, yeah, that's a good body. But people aren't going to do that with like Big Ramy. Most people are going to go, that's gross. You know, it's too blocky, it's too big. But you look at a guy like Keon's body, man, who doesn't want to look like that? Everybody. Yeah. And everybody's girl wants their guy to look like that. So, you know,
everyone's girl wants the guy to look like that. Yeah. All right. Well, man, there's so many other questions I wish we could ask, but we're kind of running out of time. I'll just ask this one last one.
Sure.
Topher Cyphers asked, what do you think about half Korean and half black genetics and bodybuilding potential?
Shit. I mean, you hit the jackpot. I mean, dude, let's just face it. The black genetics are clearly dominating most athletics, you know? And then the Korean genetics with the lower half muscularity. I mean, shit. I mean, that's a hell of an athlete right there. I mean, but not necessarily saying just because you're half Korean and half black, you're going to have good genetics. I know some scrawny black guys, you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily 100% true, but, man, I mean, the potential there, I mean, if you got the Korean lower half, like the big calves and the big legs, and then the small joints and round muscle bellies of the black genetics, dude, you're on top of the world. Yeah.
That'd be sick. All right. Awesome. Anyways, that's about it. But I just want to say, bro, like, I remember you're honestly following your journey ever since, like, maybe even 10 years ago, back when Men's Physique started. Like, I remember following Jeremy Potvin, Jordani, who else? We were just talking a few more of some of the athletes I followed, but honestly, your journey has been long, and it's honestly been amazing to watch, and you've had so much success. So just wanted to say kudos to that.
Appreciate that, man. You know, hopefully I got longer to go.
So where can everybody find you?
On my Team Zero Gravity Instagram, and then we just launched the new Instagram for the gym. We got OG Gym opening up soon. Me and Larry partnered up. We're opening the new gym. We should be open in we keep pushing it back. So let's just say like February, March, we'll be open there, and then working on several locations. So follow OG Gym, follow Team Zero Gravity. And yeah, man, I'm excited.
Let's go. Hell yes. Awesome. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so by rating us a 5-star on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you find your podcast, and then finally subscribing to the YouTube channel. And that's it. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Ryan.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Peace, guys.